morning, friends. On behalf of AP Institute of Training and Learning, I see Avinash Poddar welcome you all. We at the AP Institute of Training and Learning are starting a knowledge series on the model GST law, which will run into at least 10 parts, wherein we will be covering all the important aspects of model GST law. Along with that, we will discuss some of the provisions in comparison with the existing provisions of central excise and service tax laws. Today's first part is pertaining to overview on GST. As we all know, since last many years we have been discussing on GST and we are waiting for this largest indirect tax reform to come and get implemented as soon as possible. Dear friends, it is true that we all are expecting GST to be a reality as soon as possible. But at the same time, we should also understand why GST is required, what is the need of the same, what are the benefits we are going to have once GST is there. So before proceeding for discussion about the model GST law, I would like to touch upon the journey of GST so far and the need and benefits of having GST. So in this part, which is pertaining to overview of GST, we will be discussing about the journey of GST so far, the need and the benefits of GST, and along with this, we will be touching upon some of the important aspects. For example, taxable event. What will be the taxable event under GST? And some of the definitions given under the model GST law. So friends, now let us proceed with today's topic, that is overview of GST. First and foremost, I would like to touch upon the journey of GST so far. I will not go very far in the year 2006 or rather in the year 2000. I will be starting from 19th December 2014, which is one of the landmark dates, because on that date the 122nd Constitution Amendment Bill was laid before the Lok Sabha, which got cleared on 6th May 2015. Once it was cleared in Lok Sabha in May 2015, it was sent to the Select Committee, which submitted its report on 22nd of July 2015. Now since 22nd July 2015, we were waiting for the clearance of bill at Rajya Sabha, but due to some or the other reasons, the bill was not getting cleared. But luckily and fortunately, on 3rd of August 2016, the bill, that is the Constitution Amendment Bill 122nd, got cleared from Rajya Sabha. But again, there were certain amendments which were proposed, and those amendments were again presented before the Lok Sabha, which luckily got cleared on 8th of August 2016. So now I would say that GST seems to be a reality after a span of almost 16 years. So we have waited for 16 years for something good to happen, something which is one of the largest indirect tax reform since independence. So friends, even if GST does not come on 1st April 2017, but now it is sure that that date can be the first date of July 2017, or it may be 1st October 2017. But yes, I would say that the probability of GST is now 100%. That 100% GST will be implemented in the year 2017. May that be 1st July, may that be 1st October, or the date which is intended by the Government of India, that is 1st April 2017. Now here we need to understand what are the future works or future stages which has to be cleared before the implementation of GST, may that be on 1st April, may that be on 1st July, or in October, or in 2018. God knows. Those stages are now first, at least 50% of the states will have to ratify the Constitution Amendment Bill. Once the ratification is done, the President will have to assent on the same. As soon as the President will assent, the next stage will be the formation of a GST Council. GST Council will be formulated for the purpose of recommendations and formulations pertaining to GST. Then after that, the need for clearance of state goods and service tax law, central goods and service tax law, and integrated goods and service tax law will be there. Those will have to be passed by the respective state and the central government. Then thereafter, the issuance of rules and regulations, the notifications, circulars will be the stage. And the most important part will be of GSTN, the development and implementation of goods and service tax network. The intention behind the GST will be the automation. The network, goods and service tax network, it will be an automated online software which will deal with the entire data pertaining to GST. Once the GSTN is developed, it needs to be tested properly, and then comes the transition phase of GST. Means whenever the GST will be implemented, the existing law will have to be transited to the new law. And once all these things happen, that is ratification by 50% of states, President assent, formulation of GST Council, the passage of Central Goods and Service Tax and Integrated Goods and Service Tax bill by the central government, the passage of State Goods and Service Tax by the state government, rather all the state governments, the development of GSTN portal, issuance of rules and regulations, notifications and circulars pertaining to GST, and making the GSTN portal live. After all the stages get cleared, the GST can be implemented. So my dear friends, this was a brief discussion about the journey of GST so far, and what are the stages. Those are still to be cleared before the implementation of GST. Now, let us understand why GST is required and what are the advantages of having GST in the country. There are various reasons, friends, due to which the need for GST is felt. Some of those reasons are multiplicity of taxes, cascading effect, and double taxation. If I elaborate, by double taxation I mean wherein a single transaction is taxed both by the central government as well as by the state government. If we put an example, there can be an example of information technology service or software development. In software development, the state government is levying VAT. At the same time, the central government is levying service tax. So if we try to understand, the question arises how one particular thing can be classified both as a service as well as a good. As per me, it gives double taxation which needs to be resolved, and we expect that in case of GST these issues will come at rest. Now these were three things which I have discussed with you, because of which the need for GST arises. Now if we move forward and try to discuss about the advantages of the GST, the same becomes advantages if all these requirements are fulfilled. In case of multiplicity of taxes, wherein both the central government as well as the state government is levying tax, and there are various taxes which are getting levied. For example, in case of central government, the central sales tax, central excise, service tax, additional duties of customs, surcharge, cess. In case of state government, there is levy of sales tax, VAT, entertainment tax, luxury tax. Now when all these multiple taxes will get subsumed under GST under a single tax, the issue of multiplicity of taxes will go away, and that is going to be one of the advantages of GST. Secondly, the cascading effect of tax is again a requirement which needs to be resolved under GST. Cascading effect means the tax on tax. When I am purchasing something from a different state, then central sales tax is getting levied on the same, and when the same goods are getting sold in one particular state, then the state law of VAT is made applicable on the same. To put an example, suppose I have purchased a material from the state of Maharashtra and the material is brought in the state of Gujarat. At the time of purchase, the CST is made applicable, of which the credit is not allowed. And when the same material is being sold in the state of Gujarat, the Gujarat VAT is made applicable on the same transaction. So it means the tax is getting imposed on the tax which I have already paid at the time of my original purchase. Under GST, we are expecting the seamless flow of credit. It means that even in the case of interstate supply or interstate purchase, the credit will be allowed, and thereby the issue of cascading effect will go away, and that will become an advantage of GST. Now moving further, the third issue was double taxation. As we have discussed earlier, in case of information technology service, both VAT and service tax is getting applied. But in case of GST, since the name is goods and service tax, either something will be classified as a good or it will be classified as a service. There will be no chance wherein a particular product or particular service will be classified both as a good or as a service, which is the problem as on date. Even when we will go through the model GST law and discuss the provisions, there is a schedule 2 to the model GST law, which provides the classification very categorically. It says what is to be considered as goods and what is to be considered as service. So thereby it could be said that under GST the third advantage will be the double taxation will go away. So my dear friends, up till now I have tried to discuss in brief about the journey of GST till date, the stages which are still to be cleared for getting GST implemented either from 1st April 2017 or any date thereafter. Then I have touched upon the need and the advantages of GST. Now let us move further, and as a part of today's topic, let me give you an overview of the model GST law which was made available in the public domain on 14th of June 2016. The model GST law runs into 190 pages. It is bifurcated as Central Goods and Service Tax and State Goods and Service Tax Act. Second is Integrated Goods and Service Tax. Under State Goods and Service Tax and Central Goods and Service Tax, there are 4 schedules which are prescribed, and along with this there is determination of valuation rules. So if we try to discuss about the composition of the State Goods and Service Tax and Central Goods and Service Tax law, it runs into 25 chapters and 162 sections. It's a big law, big act, which runs into 25 chapters and 162 sections. And in case of Integrated Goods and Service Tax, it runs into 11 chapters and 33 sections. So in all, there are 195 sections under the model GST law with 4 schedules and a determination of valuation rules. This is the composition of the model GST law running into 190 pages, which was made available in the public domain on 14th of June 2016. Now my dear friends, after understanding the composition of the model GST law, now let us move into the technicalities of the same. And in this part of the knowledge series, I would simply touch upon the taxable event, which is one of the most important aspects for leviability of any tax. Because taxable event is the most important aspect. Once that is determined, the tax to be made applicable is determined. Under the existing provisions or existing law, central excise is made applicable on the removal, on the manufacture and removal of goods. In case of VAT or sales tax, it is on sale of goods. In case of service tax, it is on provision of services. What I mean to say is, the law which is prevalent is based on origin. It is an origin based law. But GST, which is going to become reality soon, is a destination based consumption tax. So the entire gamut of tax is going to be changed. Earlier or presently, the tax is made applicable or the taxable event is manufacture, provision of service or sale. But in case of GST, it is going to be consumption. So it is very important for us to understand the difference between the origin based tax and the consumption or destination based tax. The term which is very important under GST or the taxable event under GST is supply. Supply of goods and services. Now we need to understand Where the word supply is getting used, it means any supply, if made, will be covered under GST. Now let us understand section 3, which speaks about supply under SGST and CGST Act of the Model GST law. Section 3 of the SGST CGST Act provides the definition or meaning of supply. It's very unfortunate that section 3, which defines supply, start with the term supply includes. I feel very sorry reading this for you all, my dear friends, because again this term includes will create lot of disputes in future. Just recall or recollect the prevalent or the existing law of central excise. The definition of manufacture under central excise, which is defined under section 2 clause F, is still under dispute after so many years. The act was introduced in 1944. 1944 to 2016, the definition of manufacture is under dispute. What is to be termed as manufacture, what is not to be termed as manufacture is still a question. Similarly, the term supply is also made an inclusive definition, which means that whether a particular transaction is to be treated as a supply or not can again become a dispute. Anyways, whatever has been prescribed as a provision, we will have to understand and go through that only. So for you, my dear friends, I am trying to read section 3 of the Model GST law, SGST and CGST Act. It says supply includes, subsection 1 of section 3 says supply includes, then clause A, all forms of supply of goods or services. Now tell me one thing, when the first line is supply includes all forms of supply of goods and services, I don't think there is requirement of any other further definition. But still it is provided, so we will have to read that. So clause A of subsection 1 of section 3 provides supply includes all forms of supply of goods and or services such as, again an illustrative list, sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. So to sum up, all kinds of supply such as sale, exchange, barter, lease, rental, etc., which are made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business is to be treated as supply. Now let us move further to clause B of subsection 1. Clause B provides supply includes importation of service whether or not for a consideration and whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. I would like to have your attention and understand this provision of clause B of subsection 1 of section 3 of SGST and CGST Act, which provides that supply includes the importation of service even if it is not for a consideration and even if it is not in the course or furtherance of business. So to my understanding, even if something is imported not for business purpose that will be covered under the term supply and the GST will be made applicable. Now moving further, clause C of subsection 1 of section 3 of CGST and SGST Act, it says supply includes a supply specified in schedule 1 made or agreed to be made without a consideration. While discussing the composition of model GST law, we have discussed that there are 162 sections under CGST SGST Act and 4 schedules are there. So out of those 4 schedules, the first schedule discusses about those supplies which will be treated as supply under GST and which are made without any consideration. So all those supplies which are made or agreed to be made without any consideration will again be included in the term supply under clause C of subsection 1 of section 3 of the CGST SGST Act. Now subsection 2. Subsection 2 says schedule 2 in respect of matters mentioned therein shall apply for determining what is or is to be treated as supply of goods or a supply of service. So my dear friends, this is a welcome schedule, I would say, because the need and advantage which we have discussed earlier of double taxation, we have discussed an example of information technology service on which both VAT and service tax is getting levied. Now schedule 2 finds the solution of that problem. It clarifies what is to be treated as supply of goods and what is to be treated as supply of service. So subsection 2 of section 3 of CGST and SGST Act provides whatever is mentioned as a supply of goods under schedule 2 or a supply of service under schedule 2 will be treated in the same manner. Now we have touched upon subsection 1 and subsection 2. Now let us move further and discuss subsection 2A of section 3 of CGST and SGST Act. Again, under the definition of supply, it provides that where a person acting as an agent who for an agreed commission or brokerage either supplies or receives any goods and or services on behalf of any principal, the transaction between such principal and agent shall be deemed to be a supply. So now it has been made very clear that whenever a person is acting as agent for an agreed consideration, that is commission or brokerage, and when he is supplying either goods or services on behalf of any other person who is known as the principal of that person, then the transaction between such principal and agent will be treated separately and it will be covered under the definition of supply. It means if I am acting as an agent for someone, then whatever commission I am getting or whatever transaction we are entering into, that transaction will be treated as a transaction of supply. Now further moving, subsection 3, again an important subsection, it provides that subject to subsection 2. Now kindly recollect subsection 2. Subsection 2 was providing, I am not finding any answers. Subsection 2 was providing about schedule 2 to the CGST and SGST Act. Schedule 2 provides the distinction what is to be treated as supply of goods and what is to be treated as supply of service. So subsection 3 provides, subject to provisions of subsection 2, the central or state government may, upon recommendation of the council, here the council is GST council, while discussing the stages of implementation, the stages which are still to be cleared, we have discussed that once the assent is there, the GST council will be formulated. So the same council, on the recommendation of the council, is specified by notification the transactions that are to be treated as a supply of good and not a supply of service, or a supply of service and not a supply of goods, or neither a supply of service nor a supply of goods. It means what? Subject to provisions of subsection 2, subsection 2 provides the schedule 2 provision. Schedule 2 classifies whether something or whether a supply is to be treated as a supply of service or supply of goods. For the matters stated in the schedule 2, subject to provisions of that subsection, that is subsection 2, the central and the state government can issue a notification and specify a particular supply to be treated as a supply of goods and not as a supply of service, or a supply of service and not a supply of goods, or neither a supply of service nor a supply of goods. Now my dear friends, let us move to the last subsection, that is subsection 4 of section 3 of the CGST and SGST Act. It provides notwithstanding anything contained under subsection 1. Now remember, subsection 1 divided into 3 subclauses. Clause A, which was providing supply includes all forms of supply such as barter, exchange, sale, transfer, etc., for a consideration by a person in course or furtherance of business. Subclause B, which was providing about the importation of service, whether or not for a consideration and whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. And clause C, which was providing about the supply as mentioned under schedule 1, whether for consideration or without consideration. That means all those supplies which are specified under schedule 1, if made without consideration, then also it will be treated as a supply under GST. So that was subsection 1. Now it says, subsection 4 says, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, the supply of any branded service by an aggregator as defined in section 43B under a brand name or a trade name owned by him shall be deemed to be a supply of the said service by the said aggregator. So a deeming provision is there. It says, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, if any supply is being made of a branded service by an aggregator under a brand name or a trade name which is owned by the aggregator, then it shall be deemed to be a supply of said service by the aggregator. So this is the term supply, which is the most important definition under the model GST law, because the supply is the taxable event. But unfortunately, it is again an inclusive definition which will invite a lot of disputes in the time to come. Again, I would say I am hopeful that it is only a model GST law, and there are a lot of recommendations which are made by ICAI, various other organizations and associations, chambers. They might have suggested that there should not be an inclusive definition, it has to be an exhaustive definition. Let us wait and watch whether the definition is amended in the final GST law or not. So to sum up once again, the definition of supply comprises of subsection 1, which says supply includes all forms of supply. Clause A. Clause B, importation of service. Clause C, schedule 1, that is supply without consideration. Subsection 2, which speaks about the matters which are contained under schedule 2 of the SGST and CGST Act. Then subsection 2A, which speaks about the relation of agent and principal, that it will be treated as a supply of service, supply of goods and service. Subsection 3, which speaks about the power of central or the state government to issue a notification wherein they can provide that something to be treated as goods and not as a service, or as a service and not as a goods. And last, subsection 4, which speaks about the aggregator, that any branded service, if provided by an aggregator under his own brand name or trade name will be treated as supply of the said service by the aggregator. Now we are coming at the end of this part of knowledge series. I would just like to touch upon two definitions which are again very important because we are discussing supply of goods and services. So the term goods and the term supply of service, that is service, is to be understood. Section 2 deals with 109 definitions under the model GST law, and clause 48 of section 2 defines the term goods. Friends, I am very happy to see the definition of goods under clause 48 of section 2. Why I am saying so, you will come to know in just a few minutes. Let me read the definition of goods under the model GST law, then we will discuss it further. Goods means every kind of movable property other than actionable claims and money, but includes securities, growing crops, grass, and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be severed before supply or under the contract of supply. Now, over and above this definition, there has been an explanation which has been inserted, and that is the reason why I was saying that I am very happy to see this definition. The explanation provided under clause 48 of section 2 in the definition of goods, seeing which I was very happy that one of the major issues is getting resolved here, provides for the purpose of this clause the term movable property shall not include any intangible property. So my dear friends, as we have discussed earlier, that in case of information technology service, which is an intangible property, intangible service, the VAT as well as service tax both are getting levied. So now that will be resolved. It will be treated as a service, not as a goods, because under the explanation it has been provided that it is excluded from the term movable property. So now to sum up the definition of goods, all kinds of movable property other than actionable claim and money is to be termed as goods, and the term movable property does not include the intangible property. So major issue, a major problem of the existing service tax, central excise and VAT law is now rested by way of insertion of explanation which speaks about the exclusion of intangible property from the definition or from the term movable property. Now let us move to the definition of service. The term service has been defined under clause 88 of section 2 of SGST and CGST Act. It says service means anything other than goods. Simple. Whatever is not to be treated as goods, it will be treated as service. Again, an explanation has been inserted in this which provides that service includes intangible property and actionable claim but does not include money. Now try to recollect when we have discussed the definition of clause 48 of section 2 pertaining to goods. The definition was it includes all kinds of movable property but does not include actionable claim and money. And in this explanation which is provided under clause 88, that is at the definition of service, it says that it includes actionable claim but does not include money. So it means actionable claim and intangible property both will be treated as supply of service under the GST provisions. So my dear friends, by this I would like to conclude part 1 of our knowledge series on model GST law. I have tried to give an overview of GST. Along with that, I have started touching upon the technical issues and some of the important definitions that is relating to supply goods and services under this part. Next part, that is part 2 of the knowledge series, will be issued within a day or two, and it will relate to registration under the model GST law. We will discuss in detail the provisions of registration provided under the model GST law, as well as the report of the Empowered Committee of State Finance Ministers, which was released in the month of July 2015, which discussed about the business processes. With this, I am thankful to each one of you for the patience hearing. Thank you. Thank you very much.